Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Pursue Fitness. I'm here today with Eddie Hearn. We're at the Whyte-Rivas final press conference in London. How you doing, Eddie?
I think you should be wearing Pursue Fitness apparel.
I am.
Are you? What, is that there? Okay.
What do you think?
I'm not sure it's a great look for Pursuit Fitness.
Are you trying to say that I wouldn't make a good model?
You said that.
How you doing, Eddie?
Good, yeah, good. Enjoyed it today. I think it's a great card. Loads of great fights. I mean, even taking away the main event, it's a brilliant card and a lot of stake for a lot of people, and I think a really good main event as well.
Now, we spoke about the card pretty much in its entirety yesterday. One thing that we did leave out was Lawrence Okolie, who makes his return to the ring for the first time under Shane McGuigan. Excited about that link-up?
Yeah, it's so difficult to find an opponent for. I mean, dealing with the Shane McGuigan stuff first, I think Shane's a great trainer. I think it's a really good move for Lawrence. You could even see that in how they're working together. Putting it into fights is different and difficult. Decent opponent. I think he's going to come to fight. He's capable. I think he'll get knocked out. But he will have a go and he will try and win the fight, which is what we want. Lawrence is being real fast track. You know, he's been now made mandatory for the European title. This is a very, very tough fight, which they want next. And that's a big gamble and a big risk. But you know, they have belief in themselves. I think Lawrence is going to go on and become a world champion at cruiserweight. I do, and I think he'll move to the heavyweight division, and I think he'll do well up there. Awkward, rangy, skillful, very heavy-handed. Just got to get it right with his feet, with Shane, to make sure that he can fight inside, and we don't see that sort of octopus style at times locking up opponents. It's very effective. It's tough to beat, but as a promoter, it can be a tough sell. It's very difficult to say to a fighter, you're winning every fight and you're moving well ahead of your pace, but I need you to do this, fight more like this so I can sell more tickets or drive more subscribers. It's not for me to say that. They've got to do their thing, and however entertaining they are will basically reflect upon their career earnings, I guess.
We're talking about the European title next. There was a time not too long ago we were talking about potential world titles. As I understand, Denis Lebedev has retired. Was that kind of the reason for the halt on kind of a world title assault, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was never really looking for a world title fight for Lawrence Okolie, but if it was Denis Lebedev, I believe he could have beaten Denis Lebedev, and almost believed that he was there for the taking, you know. So that was a fight that we were looking at and a fight that we were interested to make. Lebedev unfortunately decided to retire, and we couldn't make that fight. And I don't think that Lawrence is quite ready yet for those guys that are milling around that world title. I believe he can beat them, but I think it's so early for him. There's no harm in giving him fights like Saturday, then gambling a little bit for the European title, and then going on and on.
Elsewhere on the card, we see David Price versus Dave Allen. Again, we spoke about that yesterday. One thing that Dave told me last night, we did an interview in a pool, weirdly enough, he told me that the Povetkin fight, he'd agreed the Povetkin fight. Can you confirm that?
Well, he's agreed, he's asked to do it. We haven't talked about money, we haven't talked about anything, other than I said there's a very good chance that Povetkin will box on the Lomachenko-Campbell card on August the 31st. If you want to fight Povetkin and if you beat David Price, I would make that fight. How much money you want, how serious you are about that fight will be determined after the fight, but do yourself a favour and focus on that fight. Don't think about anything else. And it's anything but a foregone conclusion even, to beat David Price on Saturday. You know what I mean? Dave, I don't see what Dave has done outside of the Lucas Brown fight to say that he's the favourite in that fight. But on paper, he is the favourite. So I think he probably is the favourite, but now I'm getting myself confused. And this is one of those fights where I just don't know. You get confused even thinking about what's going to happen in this fight. Both guys blow hot and cold. Both guys are vulnerable. Both guys can sometimes be a little bit limited. Both guys hit very hard. Both guys are desperate to win. I think you're going to get a cracker.
Adam Smith said something interesting. I know it's not the first time he's kind of alluded to it. I know he spoke about it in the build-up to Alan Brown, about whether or not Dave had kind of headline potential. Obviously, he's not headlining this card. But given the fact that he knocked out Lucas Brown in 3 rounds, we all know about his digital qualities, so to speak, and the pull he has on social media. Have Sky now come around to that way of thinking? Is it beneficial to Sky to have him win this fight?
I mean, I think that it was always a big challenge to get Alan Brown as main event. They backed us, we did it, it rated really well, it was a good performance, all worked out well. Now you go to the next kind of levels and he's got to beat David Price on Saturday. And, you know, it's a fight that everybody's looking forward to. It's a fight that, again, has had a lot of traction. And David gets people talking. He gets people interested. He gets people tuned in. People like his story. And now I think you can look at Dave Allen and take him seriously as a heavyweight contender because of how he's living his life.
Speaking of taking someone seriously, he just walked past about a minute or two ago. Oscar-Rivas has been all business here today. That's quite the face-off with Dillian White. I know you've mentioned about Yvonne Michelle and the fact that they're coming to win. He's very, very live in there on Saturday night.
Absolutely. I see this as a 50-50 fight, a very tough fight for Dillian White. And you saw, you know, this guy's hungry to win. We saw that in Andy Ruiz. You see that in Oscar-Rivas. And the guys that are perceived to be the favourite, the guys that are expected to win, have to be on point. Because if they're not against a young, hungry, hard-hitting heavyweight, you could come unstuck, and I think this will be a war.
With Dillian White headlining his own pay-per-view again, this is now the third time, how much post-AJ-Ruiz has the kind of landscape shifted, particularly with regards to Sky? Are Sky now more invested in Dillian White because of the AJ loss?
Not really. They've been invested from him from the start. I mean, a good example of that is, as you said, this is his third headline pay-per-view. I think the AJ Ruiz fight, the rematch, is the one that is very, very important to a lot of people. It's the biggest fight in world boxing, and you know that's going to happen later on in the year. So I don't think people are looking really beyond that. I think in boxing it's very difficult to say, oh, you know, what's going to happen in 2020? You know, let's get 2019 done yet. Anything can happen in this sport. But you know, pay-per-view. I think we had such a crazy boom of pay-per-view in the last 18 months. You know, when you look at it. Haybell U1, Haybell U2, off the back of Joshua-Povetkin, Joshua Parker, Joshua-Povetkin, Brooks Spence, Bellew Usyk. Like, you had so many crazy pay-per-view fights. That was unusual. But people sort of look at that and say, well, almost feel like that's the norm. And now I think we've gone back to the norm, which is more like 3 or 4 a year, and not as many big fights coming up, but you know, it's not really a strategy to make pay-per-view. Oh, when's the next pay-per-view fight coming? If you get one right, it's great, and it gives you the opportunity to build big cards like this, pay people a lot of money, and it's good for the sport. So yeah.
I had a few comments yesterday about the interview that we did. I think you equated the show to spending £20 in Starbucks. Some fans weren't particularly happy with that.
Why do they prefer coffee?
I think their point of view was that they wouldn't spend £20 in Starbucks. And do you feel like you're out of touch with certain sections of the fans?
No, absolutely not. I'm one of the lads. That's what I am. Just because I've got a few quid and drive a nice motor, don't mean I don't know what fans want. So no, I mean, I think 20 quid you'd spend it in Starbucks is a slight exaggeration. If you want a large pizza and a drink, you're going to be spending 20 quid. How much is a pint these days in the pub? I mean, 20 quid? That was a joke. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you really think that you're not getting value for £19.95? Like, these are the same people moaning that will go out and will go to the pub and will drink 10 or 12 pints and spend 50 or 60 quid, 40, 50, 60 quid. We'll go out, we'll buy... How much is a packet of cigarettes these days? 12 quid.
About £12.
Okay. We'll smoke 40 a day and spend 24 quid in a day on a couple of packets of fags. So, no, one thing I'm definitely not is out of touch with reality. I think that's our strongest point. But the number, like, the pay-per-view numbers are very, very consistent. You know what I mean? So I can only be judged on that and the quality of the show. Whilst I continue to put on quality shows that after the event no one's moaning about, which is generally what happens, and the numbers are solid, obviously you're going to continue to do that. You get the people campaign, oh, I found a stream. Yeah, I cut out halfway through, but I don't care, so fuck you. Oh, well done. You know, like, you. By the way, you're taking money out of the fighters' pockets. Not my pockets, the fighters' pockets. So do yourself a favour, tune in from 5, spend your money, and enjoy the night with a nice HD, crystal clear TV programme that I think will really entertain.
Joshua-Ruiz too. I know you spoke about it with Coogan. As I understand, there are still several dates up in the air. What's the hold up? I know you spoke about potentially other offers. Is that it?
Really? Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, there are probably some new conspiracy theories coming in. Oh, they said they'd do it last week. Just exactly what I said. We've had a couple of offers that I've been asked to explore. The favourites are still MSG and Cardiff, but we will see. And a decision is imminent.
I know you said November the 29th was one of the potential dates. That's a Friday. Would you be having it on a Friday?
Yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told you November 29th.
So Friday in America or
Thanksgiving weekend in New York. So Saturday morning for the UK. But it would be slightly earlier, being Thanksgiving weekend. So probably more like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, UK time, which would be good.
how much, if at all, has Anthony Joshua's deal or fight-by-fight deal with DAZN had anything to do with the rematch at all? As I understand it, he is on a fight-by-fight. Have you had any other? Has the fight had any other offers from any other networks?
There's always interest. DAZN is where we've decided that fight will take place. DAZN want the fight in the US. Sky want the fight in the UK. With all due respect to those two platforms that are very important to Anthony Joshua's career, the only person that will decide where that place will be, where the fight will take place, is Anthony Joshua. And that's probably one of the reasons why the delay, because Josh says, just do it where you want. I said, no, you've got to tell me where you want to do it. I don't care where it is. I said, well, I'm not decided. You decide. So that's why I want to present all the options and say, now you've got to decide. The training team think the fight should be in Cardiff. I probably agree with them from a common sense perspective. I do understand the go back to America and etc., but I don't think it's unreasonable, having just fought in America, to do the return fight in the UK.
With regards to networks, can you confirm whether or not you've had any offers from, for example, ESPN Plus or Showtime?
No.
You can't confirm, or you can confirm that you haven't?
A bit of both.
Okay. WBC, you spoke to me yesterday about the interim title being on the line for Dillian White to face the winner of Wilder Fury 2. You seemed a little bit, surprisingly, in my opinion, at ease with the decision. You don't strike me as somebody who takes things lying down. It didn't seem to be a compromise that I would have thought you would have been happy with. Is that a fair assessment?
I wouldn't say I'm 100% happy with it. I don't think the WBC are probably 100% happy with it. The biggest problem here is that Dominic Breazeale was made mandatory when he shouldn't be. So we have to... Champions have rights. This isn't really, unfortunately, I'd love to say it was Deontay Wilder's fault. It's not really Deontay Wilder's fault. So if you're Deontay Wilder, you say, well, just box the mandatory. So you're going to have to give him a voluntary or voluntaries. And the one voluntary that we were happy with was that fight at the end of the year. Wilder Fury pops up, but I have to understand, and the way I know the business is, people want to see that fight. Governing bodies want that fight to happen. So we had to make a decision. Do we allow that fight, or do we push to not allow that fight? Well, Dillian fighting the winner of that fight is a lot more valuable than Dillian fighting the winner of Ortiz and Wilder. So this has been going on for months and months and months. So when you say I seemed happy, are you saying I seemed...
Not happy, but I didn't expect you to take... Yeah.
Like, I'm not, part of the resolution, once we agree something, it's done. I'm not moaning about it. I'm not bitching about it. I'm not slagging off the WBC. We shake hands, we move on. It's not ideal for anybody. The whole situation hasn't been. But we respect the WBC, we respect Maurizio Sulaiman, and when we make a deal, when we agree, we both do as we say, we honour it, and we move on. And that's what we've done.
Some fans point towards the WBC's treatment of not only Deontay Wilder but other fighters at PBC under Al Heyman and say that they receive preferential treatment. Do you think that's a fair comment?
No, I think fighters with big commercial value who generate a lot of money get preferential treatment from every governing body. It's a thing called life.
Fair comment. The WBC, not the WBC, sorry, PBC. Are they? What's going on with them and Ari Emanuel? Is that a realistic deal? There's been talk of them potentially buying them out, with Dana White becoming a kind of head of operations, as it were, for PBC. What can you tell me about
that? I think that I've heard probably as much as you. I think that we're in a moment where there is a lot of interest from a lot of investment funds or sports media companies to make a move in fight sports. So anybody with a good brand and a good business is a target for a takeover, a buyout, investment, etc. So PBC, which has developed a strong brand, although it doesn't actually have promotional contracts with fighters, could be a potential target. I've heard the rumours like you have. I don't know if they're happening. I've heard them 6 months ago, so it wouldn't surprise me. And like I said, these big promotional companies seem to be sexy at the moment for big investment funds or people who want to make a move in a sport or take over a sport, etc., etc.
Would you welcome Dana White into boxing?
Absolutely, 100%. Why not? Anyone who says no is only scared or short-sighted. Dana White's a big personality. He's a very intelligent guy. He's a good promoter. I think he'll get the shock of his life coming into boxing and seeing how difficult it is and compared to the UFC in terms of making fights. But I think if he came in, it would be great for boxing.
Just wanted to get your opinion on Canelo Alvarez. He's been moved off the Mexican Independence weekend in September. Golden Boy released a statement. I know you had your back and forth with Oscar De La Hoya on Twitter. Just your thoughts on that. Did it surprise you?
I knew a little bit about what was going on. Don't want to say too much because then I get told off by Oscar. But I think they wanted to fight Kovalev, couldn't get that deal done. I think DAZN wanted him to fight Triple G. They didn't want that fight, so they decided not to fight. We have Andrade, we have Callum Smith standing by for that fight if they want to fight in October, November. But pretty simple, really. I don't think they could get the exact opponent that Canelo Alvarez wanted and decided to move the date. Probably disappointed because that is their weekend. And your next question to me, because we've already recorded this once and it failed, is that a date you'll be looking to take over? And the answer is yes, quite possibly. I'd love to do something with Gennady Golovkin on that date and possibly Usyk and Devin Haney in a big show. And historically that's been in a weekend you stay away from because Canelo's got it, now he doesn't. Perhaps we'll jump in and do something.
Is that going to create something of a rat race between yourself and the likes of the Top Rank to scramble for that date?
It's a bit tight on time. It's 8 weeks on Saturday. So it's not ideal, and I think that's why they had to call their decision, because they're running out of time. So anyone doing a show that night is running out of time. For us in the US now, we just focus on Hooker Ramirez next week, which is a great unification fight in Dallas, and start planning our schedule for September to December.
I know you've had your back and forth tongue-in-cheek with Oscar on Twitter. We have already recorded this, but I'm going to ask you again. Golden Boy versus Matchroom card. Thoughts?
I think it's fantastic. I saw it stacked up in writing. Canelo against Demetrius Andrade or Callum Smith. Jojo Diaz against Tevin Farmer. Devin Haney against Ryan Garcia. The new super middleweight champion Cancino. Maybe fight Martin Ward. David Lemieux against Callum Smith or John. There's so many fights at so many different levels. Jamie Munguia against Jesse Vargas. It's a real world-class card. Your next question is, do you think that would be easier or harder to put together than a Matchroom v Queensbury card? And the answer is easier to put together, but both quite compelling matchups. Billy Joe against Callum Smith. Boazzi against Yard. Fury Josh. Charlie Edwards against Sonny Edwards, and anything's possible.
My next question was actually going to be, you mentioned John Ryder. There's been talk about him fighting Chris Eubank Jr. on ITV pay-per-view. What can you tell me about that?
Had an offer. Very interested in that fight. Speaking to Charlie Sims and Tony Sims and the team. And if the number's right, that's definitely a fight that John Ryder would take.
Going back to Canelo kind of missing out on arguably one of two of the landmark dates in the boxing calendar, the other one being Cinco de Mayo. That can't be a good thing. Surely he is not happy with that, and Golden Boy are not happy.
They definitely didn't want to do that, and I think it's Golden Boy's job to deliver the fights and the dates for Canelo. They didn't. So I don't think anyone's happy about the situation, but they couldn't get the fight or opponent that everybody wanted, so had to move the date. I think that, like you guys, boxing media, there's sometimes you just got to accept there's no ulterior motive, there's no conspiracy just what happened was they couldn't get the opponent they want, so they decided to move the date. Not saying that you're digging for other stuff, but it's like, yeah, but I mean, no, just he couldn't get the Kovalev fight. He really wanted that fight, so he said it's 8 weeks to go. I'm going to move it back.
Sure, I understand that, but it's also worth pointing out that kind of the main money fighters, whether you go back to Floyd Mayweather and obviously Canelo, now have conventionally fought on those days. So it is quite tricky, particularly with a plethora of opponents on DAZN, for Canelo to box on that weekend.
Yeah, but he wanted to fight Kovalev, you know, and I think DAZN wanted him to fight Triple G. He didn't. So everything broke down, and eventually you run out of time. Been there before, you know, not on Mexican weekend with Canelo, but I've been there in big fights where you run out of time, you can't negotiate a deal, things get on top, and at some point you have to pull the plug, and that's what they decided to do this week.
Just before we go, I wanted to get your opinion. You are a boxing fan first and foremost, and have been for an awful long time. Boxing world was rocked this week by the untimely death of Pernell Whitaker at just 55 years old. Just your comment on his sad passing.
Just a brilliant fighter. The amount of times I've said to young fighters, watch Pernell Whitaker. I mean, I put out that, in my opinion, he's the greatest defensive fighter of all time. A lot of people came out and said, not just the greatest defensive fighter of all time, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Very true. But defensively, I do think he was the greatest of all time. Probably didn't get the credit that perhaps he deserved because of his style, but just a genius, and, you know, very sad, and our thoughts are with his family.
Okay, well, Eddie Hearn, thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social. Look forward to the show on Saturday.
Cheers.